Okay, so now we're gonna actually set up our bullet sim itself. And to begin with, let's make another one of these nulls where we say to ourselves, this represents the building. We may need to refer to these nulls someday in this scene here to say, okay, at this stage we had the building, maybe I need the bounding box for it. At this stage we had the wall. I don't know if I do some calculation, who knows what. But just for organization and just for ease of use later on, good idea to make these things. So back here, before we packed this stuff up, we had a primitive name attribute. So remember, that was per polygon. We had a whole bunch of piece zeros here, a whole bunch of piece ones and stuff, because we were basically saying this triangle and this triangle and this triangle is part of the piece that we're referring to. So for example, before the assemble here, I could say something like, hey, show me name is piece 9. And I can say like delete non-selected, so delete everything where the name of the primitive is not piece 9. You press space G to zoom in on it, and there you go. This is piece 9. Some kind of trapezoid thing. There you go. Now, when we got to the assemble though, we no longer had a primitive name. Now we have a point name. This thing automatically demotes our name attribute. It basically looks at, hey, what was the name for all the pieces, all the polygon pieces here? It looked like it was piece 9. For all the different polygons on here, all 9 of them, I guess, which is a coincidence. For all 9, we had the name was piece 9. Cool. So when it went ahead and created this guy, it said, okay, that one piece now, this one point, and now I'll make another one of these to show you. And again, this time it's points. I could say, no, it's not even doing it for us, but if I said, I'll copy that one, put it there, it'll be the same thing anyway. Keep that, and there we go. Piece 9 is just this 1 point now. The 1 point, that's this thing, has a geometry ID which points back to the right underlying geometry. And that's why we have that. It's a reference to it. You know, if I have 2 of them, then I'll have 2 references to the same underlying piece. So something like that. So now if I look, they're both called piece 9, and they're both pointing back to the same intrinsic geometry. So they both have the same underlying thing, but they don't really take up any more memory no matter how many of these things I make. So hopefully that idea has been hammered home by now. But in any case, now that we're here, the name has been put on the point geometry or the point attribute area because Bullet stores all kinds of simulation settings per piece on the points. Bounce, friction, collision, body stuff, all of that's going to be stored as a whole bunch of point attributes, as you'll see. So Assemble knows that it's probably going into a rigid body sim, so it's just a nice little thing. It makes your pack geometry and it demotes the name for you. The reason why I'm dwelling on that is because now that we've copied it apparently like 14,000 times, now let's go back into our camera, we're going to have a lot of the same piece. Look at that. Now we have a whole bunch of piece zeros. And it actually, we know exactly how many we have. This made 2 copies. This made 3 times 2 for 6. And this made 4 times 3 times 2 for 24. So now there's 24 different piece zeros. There's 24 different piece 9s. I can make yet another one of these little spurs here. In fact, I'll just grab the one from before. Did I delete it? Oh, there we go. I'll say, hey, show me all of the point-based piece 9s now. And there you go. It's the same pink trapezoid thing scattered all over the place. And they all have the same name. Now, you're allowed to do that. The Problem is, and even Bullet will allow you to do that because it'll have its own name under the hood. But the constraints that we're going to build later on aren't going to like that. They need to know what piece is being constrained to what piece. I can't say, hey, constrain piece 99 to piece 72 because there's 24 different piece 99s that could mean. So we need to make, using a primitive wrangle again, let's create a new name now. Now that we've copied it, let's call them something else. So again, we'll say the name will be essentially sprintf, and we'll call it this time maybe like inst for instance, I'm thinking. And I'm going to use a %d. %s before meant replace this with a string. Or actually, no, we did do %d before. So it's still a decimal, essentially. This time, we do want to use which point are we on. And I see also that I have it in primitive mode, so I'll have to change that in a second. So there we go. So now, if we look in here, now everyone has a separate name for sure. And something like that. Because whatever the name, whatever point we're on, that's what it's being called. And obviously every point has its own point number. So we can be pretty sure that each one of these is unique. Now, the name that we did have, though, was good for telling us. Remember we just isolated piece 9? That was good for telling us what the underlying embedded geometry was. We're going to need to know that information later. So I'm going to say, let's just save that name. When we replace our low resolution pieces with high resolution pieces, we want to know which ones to replace it with. And it would be helpful to know, I'm basically going to make a new string attribute called name, essentially original, equals the name right now. Then you can change the name after that. So you can see, name rig will be still 24 of the same things, but they'll have unique names in the simulation. The simulation is going to use the regular name attribute, but we'll be able to read this data to say, well, what did you used to be? What is your underlying piece? So that we might replace you with a high-res piece 99, a low-res piece 99, a funky piece 99, a debug piece 99, who knows what. We'll be able to use that attribute to replace it with whatever we want. So I'm going to make yet another one of these things. And these are now going to be the pieces that essentially are ready to work. And I'll call that one rename, just so it knows. Great. So at this point, I'd say we probably don't need that visualization color on anymore, at least not for now. So I'm going to turn it off here. And now it's back to being a beautiful shade of gray.